everyone. Welcome back. Happy Friday. Today we're listening to closing arguments for Letecia Stauch's trial. And actually, the jury, they're in deliberation now. They just went into deliberation. So I'm a little bit late because I forgot to go to the airport. But we're going to listen to the closing arguments. I'm going to actually start with the defense's closing argument, Letecia's team. And then I think we're going to move on to rebuttals. Because usually in rebuttal, they kind of summarize almost everything that they said in the original closing argument. So we'll do the defense. We'll listen to rebuttal, and then we'll take it from there. All right, guys. This is, again, the defense for Letecia Stauch. And wow, we're on day 20 already. Time flies, doesn't it?
There you go. The one thing...
I'm going to speed it to like 1.25. If you're watching this in a VOD, you can just slow it down to like 0.75. It should be like the same. But we're just going to speed up just a little bit, because sometimes you talk a little bit slow. But we'll see. Depends on the cadence of this lawyer. If he talks too fast, then I'll go back to normal speed. Hey, Chris, how are you doing today?
They cannot answer because there is no answer is motive. Motive for why this happened. Motive how we can go from this picture on a hike up at Garden of the Gods, loving, kind, to less than 24 hours later.
Thought we had motive.
Rage, 18 stab wounds, 4 blunt force trauma, shock. This wasn't a pre-planned, calculated killing for some gain. This was a psychotic break fueled by rage, attacking a demon from the past. They cannot come up with a motive because there is no motive that makes sense, ladies and gentlemen.
Wait, but wasn't she making some really suspicious searches online like a couple of days before or like a week before?
They have tried. They have spent hundreds, if not thousands of hours trying to come up with one. They've gone through phones. They have gone through iCloud accounts. They have gone through Facebook messages. They've interviewed everybody who they could possibly think of to try to find some motive. None of what they have done in this, the biggest investigation in the history of El Paso County, has come up with a motive. No one who they have ever interviewed has ever said that she ever had a problem with Gannon. No one who they have ever interviewed has ever said she was ever mean to Gannon. No one who they've ever interviewed or come across anything has said she's ever done anything wrong to Gannon until that horrible day when...
But her search history and her herself tells a different story. Hi, Rikta. Hi, Diane. Hello.
This happens.
Yeah, she searches, I hate my stepson. Who does that? Who searches that? That's really weird. Usually if you have a problem with a family member, it's like, oh, how do I get along with my stepson? How do I get along with my stepdaughter? How do I get along with my stepmother? Or like, mother-in-law, how do I make amends with her? Stuff like that, right? Just like, I hate my stepson. Like, what kind of Google search results are you expecting to get from that? Other people that agree with you and other people are going to be like, oh my God, let's go kill my stepson. Like, she wasn't even trying to resolve the problem, right? It just seems like she wanted to find other people that agreed with her, and then she just kind of wanted to stew in her hatred.
That is the evidence, and the most strong evidence to know this was not premeditated murder. This was a psychotic break. That is the only thing that makes sense. And when you can pull yourself back and peel back the layers of the anger over the act, at the anger over the deceit in which it happened, at the anger over Gannon's body being driven all the way to Florida, when we take those emotions back and we try to look at this rationally, the only thing that possibly makes sense is a psychotic break. There is no other rational explanation to understand why this happened other than that. He was a special needs teacher, elementary needs teacher. That's what she'd been hurt.
That's what scares me. She was a special needs teacher. I wonder how many other kids she manipulated and mind effed. I hope she didn't hurt any of those kids. I don't know, man. I wouldn't put past her.
Entire life. Working with kids
Melissa,
with special needs.
We are.
She was a mother to Harley, did everything she possibly could for Harley. She was a wife to Al, and she was tried to be the best stepmother she could be to these kids. So much so that she was left with the kids for very long periods of time. In the months preceding this, when Al had gone up to Alaska, he had left his 2 kids in her care. He was gone. We were about as far across the country as you could possibly get. And based upon his relationship with her, based upon him seeing her as a loving stepmom, felt comfortable leaving his children with her alone in South Carolina. And he did that because he knew her.
I kind of find it interesting how they were saying that oh, well, everyone says that she was a loving stepmom, that she had no reason to kill Gannon, that she loved him. But then when it comes to well, did anyone say that, she had any psychotic breaks before, or did she have DID before, any signs of it? It's oh, well, now it doesn't matter what they say. It doesn't matter what they say. Family members, close friends don't matter. Okay.
And he saw her and he saw that relationship she had with Gannon, and he felt comfortable based upon what he had seen with her. And he felt comfortable enough that when this was going on, he felt comfortable enough to leave to go to Oklahoma. Because what he had seen and what this photo shows is they had a loving relationship together until the evidence shows that she had a psychotic break. That something, mental illness from her past, got triggered, and there's a temporary period of psychosis.
No, we
That's
don't
the
believe
only
that.
rational explanation
No, it's
that has
not.
been presented. And there's
Believe it.
nothing else they can come up with as far as motive. Ladies and gentlemen, does it make sense that she may have Google searched, maybe moving to Florida? Yeah. People have problems in marriages. Do people fantasize some about getting out by Googling stuff? But how would brutally murdering Gannon, how would stabbing him 18 different times facilitate that move? It wasn't. There's no rational basis behind the murder other than psychosis. The fact that
What do I think? Do you think she's insane or no? Personally, I do not. I think she's crazy, not insane. I do not think she's mentally insane. I do not think she has DID. I think that's all crap. And I think at some point, it was suggested that maybe she came up with the whole DID thing because when she interviewed with that psychiatrist, I forgot her name, but it seemed that this guy, psychiatrist, like kind of like gave her that idea, you know, like, hey, maybe you got DID, multiple personalities.
she may have years before at some point in time done one Google search out of 1,000 saying, I don't like my stepson. That's not what I see there in that picture. That's not what I see there going on in the days leading up to this horrible tragedy. What it does,
I will say though, I don't know, because initially I thought that maybe she didn't have hate towards her stepson. It was more like hate towards her husband, hate towards herself, and it all kind of just compounded. And she blew up, and it got directed at the stepson. Really unlucky, right? But we find out that, you know, there was a candle burn going on. We find out that she may have been possibly drugging him. Seems like maybe she was also trying to find other methods of getting rid of him. She Google searched like hit and run. Like there's a lot of really weird things that was happening. I do think that she, for some reason, decided to just out Gannon and chose him as the one that she was going to concentrate all her hate on. You know, we always hear stories about like abuse where you hear like one child will be severely abused, but then the other siblings were like, oh, you know, it didn't happen to me. Don't know why. I don't know why mom decided to just abuse this one sibling, right? So, you know, sometimes we hear stories like that, and we don't know why she was so fixated on Gannon. I have no idea.
seem to indicate, ladies and gentlemen, if we start looking at this time frame, looking at the reliable evidence that we have in front of us, is that somehow that fire that have some type of trigger, maybe some type of trigger that had been disassociated long ago.
Happy
We have
Friday.
her
Hi, Adam.
starting meltdown right after this fire. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Lewis used the term wacky a lot, maybe not.
Oh, wait, is Dr. Lewis the one that's a psychiatrist? Oh, man, I hope this lawyer is not going to refer to Dr. Lewis too much. I don't know, man. I don't think she did well on the stand.
Not the most scientific term, but when something seems irrational, when something doesn't seem to make sense, we have to consider mental illness. We have to consider possible psychosis. I would say that video that you heard up there, listen to the tenor of her voice, listen to what she is saying. She says, I'm freaked out. And when you listen to her voice, she is freaked out. And she's saying irrational stuff like, we're going to have to sell the sofa. Stuff like that to Gannon. That makes no sense there whatsoever.
No, she was manipulative. She was disgusting. And I don't think it was because she was like freaking out. I think if anything, I think she heard Gannon and she was trying to record it just to have like, I don't know, maybe like proof that Gannon was alive during the candle burn, or maybe even to show that like, okay, I need to prove that like I didn't do these burns to Gannon, and maybe he'll say something on the recording that will like, you know, free me of any, I don't know, accusations maybe. I don't know. Like, honestly, that video recording was like really unhinged. It was really weird. I still very confused if she deleted it and they were able to recover it, or if she just like kept it in her phone. It's so weird.
And then importantly, ladies and gentlemen, we also see mania starting to settle in when we start looking at these timelines specifically.
Really?
You're up
Mania?
there, they're texting back and forth, 10:15, Harley comes home, 10:24, 11:30, she's still talking to Al. $2:48, she's texting Al.
Okay.
4:36.
I don't know if the jury's even going to be able to read this. This font looks tiny. And the billboard, yeah, it's a huge billboard, but looks like the contents in it is really small. Can the jury see this?
Texting the school saying that her stepfather passed away. Her
Okay.
stepfather who had abused her was not, and you heard it from Dr. Torres at the state hospital, They are not doubting or disputing the abuse that she suffered growing up. And that's from Dr. Torres, who had investigated this, who had medical record provided, who had family members provided, who interviewed other family members. And she says the state hospital is not disputing the horrible trauma that she grew up with. And the person who she had suffered that horrible trauma from, that's who she calls and says dies at 4:36 in the morning. What is more important by this, ladies and gentlemen, important to look at, what is also that we see, what is she not doing? She's not sleeping. She is manic at this point in time. She is texting throughout the night, 2:48, 4:36, 4:36 again.
No, I don't think it's manic. I think she had something in the works. She was really nervous because what happens when you're really nervous or excited about something? You don't sleep. You kind of just stay up and you're just kind of like, oh, okay. Like this is about to happen. You're amping yourself up. Like I think that's the reason why she didn't go to sleep is because she knew something was about to go down. Or, she hurt Gannon severely and she was she was trying to figure out ways to get out of it. And then, you know what she decided on? She decided to kill him. 5:03, 5:49, 7:32. She is up the entire night and not sleeping. There is something going on with her head that is not seeming right. There's stuff going on through the day. The text messages Hi,
back
Justin.
and forth.
Hi, Joe.
Harley leaves for work.
I know, right, Denise?
Other conversations going on.
That's how I feel sometimes. I'm like, dude, it's such a waste of time, man. Just, off with them. But, it's the American justice system. We have to go through this process, right? Because sometimes, when you think someone's really damn guilty and then they're not, you're just like, oh, okay, well, it's a good thing we went through with this. Otherwise that person would have had their head chopped off a long time ago.
And then they leave, they go up to Petco.
I don't know. That visual aid seems crap.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Young has tried to insinuate that all of this was some type of big preconceived plan, that she had made some decision earlier on at that point in time that she was going to kill Gannon. Ladies and gentlemen, does that make any sense? If she had decided at that point, early in the day, when everybody else leaves, Harley's left for work, she's just there alone with Gannon by herself. If there was a decision that was made that for some reason they cannot explain that she was going to brutally murder him, why is she taking him in the car and going up to Petco to buy Valentine's Day outfits for the dogs?
Because they went on a long drive because I think she was trying to figure out, okay, how can I get rid of him? Should I just dump him in the woods? Should I just like how should I do this? I think she was trying to figure out. She was like figuring out how to get rid of him.
That makes absolutely no sense why she would push back a timeline to just an hour or so before Lena got home. For some reason, unbeknownst to anybody, commit this brutally horrific act. Mr. Young tried to comment a lot about the hydrocodone.
Okay.
Be very careful when they try to put facts in their opinion or what they would like them to be. That was not provided by any of the witness testimony. Dr. Ignacio testified that there was hydrocodone in the system. She never made any assertions about how much, whether it was a dangerous level, whether it was inappropriate, whether it would have been affecting him whatsoever that way. All she said is this was a tox screen. This came.
I have a question. Do kids, for any reason, do they take hydrocodone though? For any reason? Do kids take hydrocodone? Like if you had surgery or something, like hydrocodone should never be used to treat pain or a cough in children younger than 18. Yeah, I was like, hydrocodone? Kids take hydrocodone? What? Hello? I think Letecia was trying to say that like, oh, Gannon was taking hydrocodone on his own. Okay, Gannon's smart enough to treat his sickness with hydrocodone. Gannon's smart enough to get rid of the smell of poop by lighting up a candle.
Came back. That's Mr. Young's opinion that somehow
kids just do this. Something stinks. You fucking hand wave it. You don't just, let me just light a candle. Oh, no, my God, it smells good. Oh, lavender scent. Love it.
This was an overdose of hydrocodone, but there was no evidence of that.
Maria's a junkie.
And there was no basis that would be for a brutal, horrible attack on a young 11-year-old boy that she'd just been hiking with up there 24 hours earlier. Something is going on in her mind. Something is there losing it. And something horrible occurs in the basement where there is a brutal, brutal attack. The brutality of the attack, ladies and gentlemen, I would say is the strongest evidence in this entire case.
He's like, let me take a sip really quick. I feel like it's really hard for him because, he probably thinks Letecia's a piece of crap too, but he's got to go up there, put on his game face, do his best that he can to represent Letecia, right? But dude, it must be tough, man. Laura's could be the greatest actors in the world.
Of a psychotic break. That type of violence wouldn't be needed to kill an 11-year-old boy. Gannon weighed 80, 85 pounds. An 11-year-old kid. Not the biggest 11-year-old kid. Not the strongest 11-year-old kid. Fun, nice kid. What do we know about him? He likes to play a lot of video games. But not needing this type of brutal, horrific rage to kill him. And there is no other, again, explanation other than the psychotic break. Lena then comes home, and ladies and gentlemen, look on that video. Lena wasn't pushed outside. Lena came in the house. She's in that house for about 10, 15 minutes. And then she goes out and gets on her bike and leaves. The idea that Lena was never allowed in the house is a fantasy that is not supported by the evidence, that is not supported by any of the videos. Okay, that is Mr. Young's opinion. But look at that video. You see her going in the house. You then see about an hour later, Harley coming to the house. And we know that Harley came in the house, and Harley actually went down in the basement.
I was prescribed hydrocodone at 16 when I got my 4 wisdom teeth pulled out. I can see that. Being a defense lawyer is like giving a book report for a book you never read in front of an entire courtroom. I don't know, man. That's more like what's her name again? Dr. Lewis? Dr. Lewis, what do you know about this case? Do you know about this? Do you know about this? Do you remember this? Is that your son right there?
Why do we know that? Because she changes out of her uniform before going to the dollar store. So there's nothing in there that these kids were kept out of this house, and there is nothing to indicate that this was pre-planned that would keep this type of information away from them. What is going on in her head? We don't know. But here's the important thing, and here's what Mr. Young is trying to do. He is trying to introduce antisocial personality disorder into this. Because
Okay.
I would state to you, ladies and gentlemen, there are only 2 things.
I think the prosecution, they had their own medical people. And didn't they diagnose Letecia with narcissism? What's it called? The narcissism one and like borderline personality disorder or something like that, right? If I remember correctly. Hey, Gwen, how are you doing today?
Things that account for her actions at this point in time, for the remainder of this day and the days preceding, is either disassociation, where she has put that memory of this brutal attack of what she did to Gannon someplace that she doesn't have access to, and she doesn't understand what's going on or where Gannon is, or what she had done to him, or antisocial personality, or that she's some type of psychopath. Mr. Young, remember back to Dr. Torres, tried to interject many times with Dr. Torres the possibility of antisocial personality disorder, and Dr. Torres was firm. No, she does not meet the criteria for antisocial personality disorder. One, there's no past criminality with her. That's an element that you need for antisocial personality disorder. Other people with antisocial personality are unempathetic to people and don't.
Really? For antisocial personality disorder, you need to have one history of criminality. But like, what if you just committed the crime now? You know, she killed Gannon, right? Does she now have antisocial personality disorder? She technically commit a crime, right?
Don't care about people. Again, for her entire career, she was a special needs teacher, teaching kids, helping kids who have disabilities. Through her whole life, that had been her career. That is not a psychopath with antisocial personality disorder. That it could be somebody with a dissociative disorder.
Poor kids, man. If I found out that any, like, imagine being the parent of the kids and then you realize, oh my God, Letecia was their parent, was their teacher. Oh God.
Either DID
Scary.
or borderline personality disorder with dissociative features, who has kept horrible trauma in her past behind her and is trying to make the lives of kids with special needs better for them. That is somebody with empathy who does that whole thing. Ladies and gentlemen, I would put before you the strongest evidence of disassociation going on here. Look at the body-worn camera of the sheriffs when they come in that night looking for Gannon. The most horrible, brutal attack has happened before there. Gannon is in the house, in the suitcase. It has all been recently covered up. She's there with her daughter. She's there with Lena. And she's acting and presenting herself to these police, laughing, joking, being incredibly friendly.
Yeah, because she's a POS.
Just after this has happened. Because at that point in time, she has disassociated the horrible act that she has committed. There's no other logical explanation for how that she is doing that.
Oh, I think the hiking trip was supposed to be an accident too, but either backfired, couldn't get away from the others long enough. If you've seen the vid, all it would have taken is one wrong step. Ooh, possibly. Like the drunk laughing girl. You're talking about Stephanie
And when you go back
Melgoza.
and look at these timelines, ladies and gentlemen, look and go through them. What is really important during this whole time, she is not sleeping at all. For the whole time here that this is all going on, you see activity going on her phone or things that she's doing all through the night. She is in a manic situation and her mind is not working. Again, we heard Dr. Lewis talk about irrational things that she is doing that doesn't make any sense. Ladies and gentlemen, it makes no sense for somebody who has pre-planned for whatever reason, whatever motive, to brutally kill Gannon, to then report him missing right away, and then in a matter of 3 days later.
Well, she was in his he was in her care. So like if she didn't say anything and he was missing for 1 day, 2 days, and the dad was coming back soon, That would look even more suspicious, right? If she didn't report anything, it's like, oh yeah, I guess I didn't see Gannon last night or this morning. Oh, well, I guess I'll report him missing now.
Go into the police with a completely illogical, incoherent story. You've heard.
It's because she ain't smart, man. Listen, she didn't even, if Gannon was really missing, she would have asked the neighbors. She would have looked around, but she didn't knock on nobody's door.
Different witnesses. Miss Stauch was an intelligent, above average intelligence woman, a smart woman, everything like that. To go in only 2 days later and sit down with the police and come up with
Find her
the
LinkedIn
ridiculous story of Eduardo is not the actions of a sane, rational person. It is irrational belief. Even children know. If you keep saying different stories, you're not going to be believed. Even looking back at the little boy who cried wolf, which we teach children, if you keep making up things, then you're not going to believe. She changes her story, not only completely different, not only with no explanation as to really why she
Well, when a story doesn't stick, you change it, right?
made up the prior story to one that she is
Happens all the
changing now.
time.
But comes up with this ridiculous thing that she met this Eduardo, that he was just going to come over and fix the carpet for free. She's indicating she's not even planning on paying him, that somehow he is in the garage when they get there, that he then takes her down into the basement and rapes her for an hour, and that he takes Gannon in a suitcase and leads out of the home. That are not the actions of somebody who is sane and logical. That is completely irrational to believe that that kind of thing could possibly be believed.
How would she have come up with that lie, though? If she didn't know that,
Her actions, I would say, continue to be irrational.
if she was dissociating and she didn't know that, she was the one that killed Gannon.
She keeps changing her story. She keeps giving different accounts. Gannon is placed in the suitcase, driven all the way to Florida. She goes through Louisiana. She goes through all kinds of East Texas, all kinds of places where people are not around, deserted areas, long areas of desolation, many places where that suitcase could have been hidden and never been found. And she goes all the way to Pensacola, Florida, and drops it off at a dry space under a bridge.
It drops it off.
Right near a major.
My understanding was she chucked it off the bridge or something.
That's not the actions of somebody who is rational, who is trying to hide that away.
Wait, why not? I feel like every time he says a sentence that he very bodily disagrees with, he takes a sip of water.
She then goes to South Carolina, and you can look at the Google searches that she performs in South Carolina. Face transplant near me. Like she's Googling for a McDonald's or a restaurant that's very close to her. That she's going to pop up, that she's going to go over there and get an entire face plant to change the way she looks. Those are not the actions of a sane and rational person. Those are the actions of somebody that is delusional. Ladies and gentlemen, I would say all of these pretext phone calls with Al are the actions of somebody who is delusional.
All right, guys, replace the word delusional and replace it with stupid. How about that?
Go back and listen. Listen to those February 14 phone calls.
Is that too mean?
Listen to how her voice and tenor changes between phone calls. Listen to how her emotions switch rapidly during the phone calls with Al, and her stories switch rapidly that no sane, rational persons of overintelligence could possibly expect anybody to believe. She is freaking out, and she is delusional in the thought that anybody is going to believe all the different variations that she's trying to sell them. None of that is rational. None of that makes sense.
Man, Yellow Tie lawyer is like, oh, dude, thank God I'm not doing closing arguments. I'm just chilling here while this bitch breathes on my. Look, Letecia, she's reading the notes right now.
And so again, what then we're brought back to is why. What was going on? What preceded this? And looking, it's going to end up in the mental health experts. And I want to talk a little bit about Dr. Lewis.
Oh my God. It is Dr. Lewis, right? The one that we...
She is 85 years old. She has been doing research.
Wait, Dr. Lewis, 85 years old? Wow. Not bad, actually. I mean, yeah, she said she had a lot of I forgets, but 85 years old. I couldn't tell. I mean, it's pretty blurry and pixelated.
Research,
Jesus.
treating, evaluating people with serious mental illness for over 60 years. She's one of the foremost experts in the country.
I don't know, man. I kind of want to go back and look at Dr. Lewis's work or something. I don't know how the heck she got on this case and how she agreed and how she said Letecia has DID and Letecia didn't know right from wrong during the time of the crime.
On dissociative identity disorder, she has been published in peer-reviewed journals well over 100 times. things that educates other psychiatrists and things that educates other doctors.
Okay, because I'm wondering why he keeps saying faceplant. I was like, faceplant? Maybe because he was looking over Letecia. Was she faceplanting at that time?
She has authored and produced. She has done, she has the HBO documentary. They don't go just to quacks to do an HBO documentary.
They don't go to quacks to do an HBO documentary. I don't know. Let's go see who HBO has done a doc on.
They went and they did a documentary on her because she was groundbreaking in her field. Has she consulted on other stuff with Robert De Niro and so forth? Yes. Not because she's a quack, because she has explored and she knows more about this subject than almost anybody else in the country.
Yeah, but you can also be groundbreaking, but you can also be wrong. You can also be groundbreaking, and you can also maybe just lose your touch. I don't know. I'm just very confused why she thinks Letecia has DID.
Has she, in her age,
Hey, Mom
some
Bear.
of the details, the minute things in the discovery get lost a little bit in her memory? They do. And you saw that up on the stand when she was testifying. I'm not disputing that.
Okay.
But what she has is the decades and decades of experience with this, the decades and decades of dealing with people with
Poor guy. Not only does he have to defend Letecia, he's also got to go up there and defend Dr.
severe mental illness who commit heinous acts. She has that experience to rely upon, and she had 14 hours of interviews with Ms. Stauch to talk with her, to base her opinion. She had notes from family members, other types of things to show this, and in her expert opinion, is legally insane. She wanted the EEG and the MRI to possibly know if there was also organic brain damage going on here. There was some type of brain trauma that was contributing to the mental illness of Ms. Stauch. But what you heard at the end is she did not need those type of things to make the diagnosis of dissociative identity disorder, which she was confident on and she believes upon. Ladies and gentlemen, I would ask you, do not discount her decades of experience. Do not discount her expertise, okay? The acting that, this is a woman who has pioneered this.
Too late. We totally did.
A woman who has made her life on this. A woman who has been peer reviewed over hundreds of times in different articles on this subject. Is willing to throw that all.
And you know how she did bad too if the lawyer has to go up there defending their one expert witness this hard. What are we at, like 10 minutes now?
The way to come down here at a substantially reduced fee to testify is ludicrous and it's insulting. They pay their experts just the same as we do, okay? Then that's why I asked their blood spatter expert, histories. It wasn't acting like there was anything wrong with that. It's just to show both sides hire experts, both sides pay experts. Mm-hmm. Just because the expert isn't getting paid doesn't mean that they are money-grubbing liars, okay? Experts in this type of thing, to come and testify, they charge money, they charge a fee. She actually reduced her normal fee to come down and help with Ms. Stauch and to do this evaluation. And what did she tell you, ladies and gentlemen? Ms. Stauch, of all the hundreds and hundreds of...
I don't know. I just kind of wonder, maybe she didn't really have much going on. And she's like, okay, sure, yeah, I'll agree to do this. I don't know. Did the prosecution already do their closing? I actually went straight to the defense. We're at the defense right now, and I was going to listen to rebuttal, because usually in rebuttal, they kind of re-summarize everything they said in the closing. But we're going to do defense, we're going to do rebuttal, and then we'll see from there.
Different mentally ill people that she has ever dealt with is one of the most mentally ill persons that she's ever dealt with. And what else is she saying? I think this is key. Pay very close attention. She's not endorsing that it was definitely Maria that did this. Mm-hmm. She's not endorsing how Maria is saying this happened. Okay. What is she saying? Ms. Stauch has, in her opinion, more than likely disassociated the memory of the homicide because she can't bear to deal with it. That was actually a very good question by Mr. Young on it.
But I guess, like, if you didn't know you had DID, doesn't a psychiatrist don't they have to draw it out of you somehow? And then you have to get one of your identities to communicate with another identity in order to gain information from that identity. Because I want to know, how did Letecia know that Maria murdered Gannon? How did she have access to that memory if she didn't have access to it before, right? Did the doctor go through, it honestly just seems like the doctor was like, oh, you know what? You got DID. Okay, let's talk it out and let's see how you have DID, right? Not like, oh, let's talk first. And then as I'm talking to you, oh my God, maybe you have DID. Let's get access to other personalities. Like, I don't know. And they only interviewed for not even that long, right? Like, it's not like she's been the psychiatrist for Letecia for years or months, right? It was only like, what was it again? How long did they meet for? I feel like there's a lot of work that would have to be done in order to even get to the point to get access to all the personalities and stuff like that, right? Jesus. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a damn psychiatrist, but it seems like it's not easy to just be like, hey, let's summon Maria. Get Maria over here. Let's talk to Maria. Maria, she did the crime, right? She took her at face value. He just definitely saw a sucker. The doctor came in. Yes.
And I think there's a lot of validity to that.
Okay.
Ms. Stauch accepting the idea that she committed this brutal, horrible homicide in the manner that was done, smashing that 11-year-old's head in.
Also, from my understanding, Letecia was the one that said that when she talked to her lawyers, that's when she realized, that's when they all came up with, oh, you know what? It must have been me that did it. And it must have been my other personality. It was like something like that. It was like what was that interview that she did? She was talking to someone and she was like, yeah, after talking to my lawyers, that's how I realized that it was me who killed Gannon and this is me who blah, 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 but not actually me. And I was like, oh, so like, did you talk to your lawyers and this is how you guys concocted the story?
And not deal with it. To accept that fact in her mind would crush her, would crush her soul, would crush her
14
identity.
hours interview.
And so she has come up with all of these delusional fantasies, trying to come up with some other thing that may have happened.
Yeah. Delusional.
And listen to her voice, listen to the tenor when she's describing that.
No.
When she's hoping, when she's talking to Dr. Lewis, I can't remember if it's Dr. Lewis or Dr. Torres, about the different versions that she's given, that she was coming up in her mind, hoping and believing it was somebody other than her who did this. The facts, ladies, and we're not disputing that, ladies and gentlemen, it was her. But she was not in her right mind when she did it.
Listen, she wishes it wasn't her. Okay. She wishes it was this made up person named Maria or, non-made up person, Quincy Brown, America's Most Wanted. And where were they again? El Paso?
And you heard Dr. Lewis state that.
Anyone
and you
but
can look at the evidence
Letecia.
and you can look at the other things that go around to realize that is the only reasonable, rational conclusion
Hey, David.
as to how this horrible thing happened was a psychotic break. Dakota Lowry, who when he finally realized
The brother?
that his older half-sister actually did this, the first thing that came into his mind, based upon what he knew of his half-sister, was there had to be some type of psychotic break that had happened.
Wait, did he actually say that? You're putting words in his mouth. Because I thought the brother never said anything about Letecia having a history of, having DID.
That there could be no other explanation as to why it
I think he was just really confused why she did it and how she could have done that, right?
did it. And those are people that knew her and that have grown up with her. I also want to talk a lot, or some, about Dr. Torres. And it is what is important, ladies and gentlemen, to know with both Dr. Torres, Dr. Gray, and Dr. Grimmett is none of the experts that you have heard from that did any type of
Hey,
evaluation
Jaron.
think that there's no mental illness going on here. Okay? They all agree there's some type of mental illness. They just disagree over what to call that mental illness. We have Grimmett and Torres and Gray diagnosing her with borderline personality disorder,
Okay.
which is a significant mental illness,
Yeah.
which, as you said, comes from right on the border between full-blown psychosis and a neurosis. Okay, it's the most serious of all the personality disorder, and it's so serious because there are such prominent features of psychosis that go along with it. Psychosis where people hallucinate, psychosis where people become delusional, psychosis where people stop becoming irrational. All of that stuff can come and go in people with borderline personality disorder. And it comes and goes according to DSM-5, according to Dr. Torres, according to Dr. Grimmett, when people with borderline personality disorder start to experience high stress. That is why Dr. Niederhauser was important. It was not because Dr. Niederhauser made any type of diagnosis or anything with that, but she came to Dr. Niederhauser because he was experiencing high stress and high anxiety that was causing her to be unable to perform at work. The stress and all of that was mounting. You can look at her Google searches. The Google searches leading up to this. For whatever reason, her stress in life was becoming overwhelming. She felt underappreciated. She felt like running away. She felt like leaving. She felt like this was all too much on her plate.
Yes. All this right here is the motive. Yes. Keep going, Mr.
There was
Lawyer.
nobody there to help her. And you heard from Dr.
all
Torres
motive right
about
there.
how people with borderline personality disorder feel stress much different than everybody else. Things that would not be normal stressors for all of us can become extremely stressful for somebody with borderline personality disorder. And the other thing that was important that Dr. Torres, we talked about quite a bit, is that it is a lot of the same things, the same type of horrible childhood trauma, the type of trauma where you have one parent who is molesting you and another parent who won't do a damn thing about it. that can cause either dissociative identity disorder or borderline personality disorder. They both come from the exact same environment that Dr. Torres said Ms. Stauch grew up in. That type of environment is what can cause people to have borderline personality disorder, which then under periods of stress and anxiety can become psychotic. And I think one of the other things, and I think is something to look in, and it's something I want you guys to think about when you go back in that jury room, is something that Dakota Lowry said at the end. We don't know exactly all the intricacies of the trauma or the abuse that Ms. Stauch suffered. We don't. Some of that she knows about, some of that she's come to remember, some of that is locked away, some of that is hidden by other family members who don't want to admit it. But what did Dakota talk about when he was a kid and after his stepdad has died and his mom had moved on to another abusive alcoholic in the home and Ms. Stauch would come visit him? What would she do? She would leave him with knives to protect himself from something or someone. And the fact you can draw that Ms. Stauch sometimes as a kid going through that trauma either had to protect herself with knives or fantasized about having a knife to protect her. And then you have the connection between Gannon being stabbed 18 times with a knife. Some of these things are hidden. Some of these things are hard to look at, but there is that association there between what we can assume with some of the childhood trauma that Ms. Stauch suffered, how she dealt with it, and how this horrible thing happened to Gannon. And I understand that Dr. Torres didn't think she was insane, but you can't discount the fact that Dr. Torres readily admitted borderline personality disorder can be a serious mental illness. People with borderline personality disorder can suffer psychosis. People with borderline personality can become irrational. People with borderline personality disorder can disassociate things that the
Right? She should have just that's what I was saying. I was like, she had outs, man. There's no way she was like stuck in this relationship. She was able to hold a job. Her biological daughter is 17, about to turn 18 soon, about to be like independent-ish. And she could have just GTFO'd, but no. She stayed and then she murdered the little boy. It's like, get the hell out. If you can't handle it, get out. You know, if you don't want to deal with babysitting, you don't want to deal with other people's kids, you don't like your husband, you don't want to deal with his ex-wife, then get out. Just get the fuck out.
The whole person cannot deal with. And that disassociation explains all of these crazy cockamamie lies. It is a fantasy on Ms. Stauch to try to explain this horrible action that she cannot rectify in her home with. And whether you call it borderline, whether you call it DID, I think Dr. Lewis was correct. That is not necessarily the important thing. What the important thing is look at the facts overall and realize this must have been some type of psychotic action.
Dr. Lewis did say a huge truth, though. She said that Letecia killed Gannon and that Letecia is guilty of killing Gannon. But then remember when the prosecution was like, wait, so you're saying she's guilty of killing Gannon? She's like, oh, wait, no, I take the word guilty back. I shouldn't use the word guilty.
Going on with normal people, mentally healthy normal people.
It would be a different story if Letecia was in a very abusive relationship with Gannon's dad and he was like the abuser and like she was like mentally screwed and she couldn't get out and stuff like that. And then maybe she took all her anger towards the husband, towards the son, and that's when she was like mentally dissociating or something like that. Like it was something like that was happening. Maybe, you know, like, okay, maybe, you know, like she was in a really bad position. Maybe she had a mental break, but like, no, man, no. She could have just gotten out, get a divorce, leave.
Don't one day go on a hike, take smiling photos, and the next day stab a kid 18 times for no apparent reason. And no matter how much Mr. Young would like her to be antisocial personality disorder, and he would like that because that takes insanity off the table, none of the evaluators ever have diagnosed her with antisocial personality disorder. None of the diagnoses have even had the rule out antisocial personality disorder. Antisocial personality disorder is something that is always considered at the state hospital, but there are criteria, and she did not meet it. No matter how many times in different ways Mr. Young tried to ask Dr. Torres.
Did she react to that when her brother yelled at her? Or did she just have her head face down behind the tissue box?
About it, she was firm and said, no, that is not the diagnosis that we have given her. That's not the diagnosis that Dr. Gray gave her. It's not the diagnosis that Dr. Grimmick gave her. And it's really not the diagnosis that Dr. Lewis gave her. So all the antisocial personality disorder talk is a smokescreen. And when you take the antisocial personality off, the only thing that explains her conduct afterwards is disassociation, is disassociating from the horrible thing that she has done, and she's trying somehow to fix this or to get out of it. The other thing that I want to talk to you, and it's important, that was very apparent with Dr. Torres, Mr. Young would like you to believe that the only time somebody is legal insane if they commit the crime and they just stay there saying, yep, it was me, I did it for these reasons. Dr. Torres and the jury instructions from the court state somebody cannot know right from wrong, but still recognize that their conduct was criminal when it occurred. And so you heard from Dr. Torres, just because somebody in a state of psychosis, in a state of insanity, commits a horrible murder and then tries to cover it up, the covering up of the murder does not preclude insanity. And she talked about how there are cases that she has had where somebody was insane who then tried to cover up the acts that they have done because they didn't want to suffer the criminal repercussions. They are not mutually exclusive. That's not coming from me. That's coming from the instructions that you have from the court.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, you guys have been above and beyond in this. And we are very grateful for the time that you guys have given us, the thought that you guys have put all into this.
We're very grateful for letting us waste your time.
The sacrifice in your lives that you have made through this long, know it, together insanity. We're not saying set her free. We're not saying let her go. We're not saying don't hold her
I don't know, man. What if she does get set free?
responsible. We're saying for you to take into account the mental illness that she suffered and send her down to CMHIP, where you see how it is down at CMHIP during those interviews with Dr. Torres, where she's shackled fully, where there's constraints, where it's a locked facility, and that's where Dr. Torres told you, if you find her not guilty by reason of insanity, that's where she is going, where there is better life proof.
We're gonna see when there's
Is
anything
have
else.
they presented enough evidence involved here? Have they completely there when
They were
with the court-
towards the end now. Yep.
And so if you believe that it is possible that this occurred in a state of psychosis, your legal duty, which you was
Oh, really? The prosecution mentioned that family members want to be there for the verdict.
sworn to do, is to find her not guilty by reason.
Dude, I wanted to be there for the verdict too. All right, is this rebuttal now? Or are we taking a little break? All right, that is Letecia's defense. I think they are going to take a little break. And then, I
Right,
wanna
ladies and gentlemen,
listen to
the
rebuttal.
prosecution does have a right to a rebuttal, and they
Nice.
All rise for the jury, please.
Oh my God, it's Letecia. I'm going to use the restroom really quick. All right, restroom, get up, stretch, and then let's listen to the rebuttal.